The canyon came alive at night, not with sound, but with shadows. They stretched long and crooked across the rock walls, cast by lanterns swinging from calloused hands and mule tack. Hamzy had learned to read those shadows the way others read faces. Tonight, they told her the miners were hurt badly. She stepped down from the wagon with practiced calm, boots crunching against gravel dusted with silver, or the air smelled of iron, sweat, and sage. Her medical satchel was already in her hand, fingers wrapped tight around the worn leather handle. She'd traveled 3 territories with this bag, mending broken bones and stitching torn skin, earning her keep one mining camp at a time. "Over here," someone called, voice hoarse with worry. Hamzy followed the sound to a makeshift shelter near the canyon wall. 2 miners lay on bedrolls, faces pale beneath layers of grime. One clutched his leg, blood seeping through his trousers. The other coughed shallowly, ribs wrapped in a crude bandage. She knelt, without hesitation. "Easy now," she said softly, her voice steady, reassuring. "I'm here." As she worked, she felt it, that prickle between her shoulders that meant she was being watched. Hamzy had grown used to stares, especially as a woman traveling alone in rough places. Most looks were curious. Some were unkind. This one was different. When she glanced up, she saw him standing a few paces away. Half in shadow, tall, broad-shouldered, a trail guide. By the look of his dust-worn coat and the rifle resting easy against his side, his eyes stayed on her hands as she cleaned a wound, sharp and assessing, like a man used to danger. "You, the nurse they sent for?" he asked. "Yes," Hamzy replied, not looking up. "And unless you want to help, you're in my light." A corner of his mouth twitched. He stepped aside without argument. "Name's Dave." She nodded once. Hamzy, no last name. She rarely gave one. Minutes passed in focused silence. Hamzy stitched, wrapped, and set bones with efficiency earned through long nights and little rest. Dave watched the perimeter, occasionally scanning the dark canyon mouth as if expecting trouble to crawl out of it. When one of the miners cried out in pain, Dave moved instinctively closer. "He's going to be fine," Hamzy said, "but I'll need clean water and a steady hand." Dave didn't hesitate. He fetched water from a nearby stream, returned with it still cool, then held the lantern where she needed it, steady as stone. Their shoulders brushed once, just barely, but Hamzy felt it all the same. A quiet awareness, warm and unexpected. "Do you do this often?" Dave asked. "More than I sleep," she replied. "Dangerous work. Traveling alone." Hamzy tied off a bandage. "So is guiding men through canyons that want them dead." That earned a low chuckle. When the miners were settled and breathing easier, Hamzy finally stood, stretching her stiff back. The canyon was quieter now. The crisis eased. Moonlight spilled down the rock walls, silver and pale. Dave tipped his hat. "You saved their lives." "I helped," she corrected. "Healing takes time." He studied her for a moment longer, something thoughtful in his gaze. "This canyon isn't kind after dark. You're welcome to stay near my camp tonight. Safer that way." Hamzy hesitated. Trust didn't come easy, but exhaustion weighed heavier. "All right," she said. "Just for the night." As they walked together through the canyon shadows, Hamzy couldn't shake the feeling that this meeting under lantern light and moon shadow was the start of something neither of them had planned, but both might need. Dave's camp sat on a narrow ledge overlooking the canyon floor, protected on 3 sides by stone and scrub pine. A small fire crackled at its center, sending sparks into the cool night air. Hamzy lowered herself onto a folded blanket near the flames, fatigue settling into her bones now that the urgency had passed. "You can take the bedroll," Dave said, setting a kettle over the fire. "I've slept on rock harder than this canyon." "I'll manage," Hamzy replied. "I've slept in worse places than either." That earned another quiet smile from him. He poured water into the kettle, movements careful, unhurried. Everything about Dave spoke of a man used to watching, waiting, surviving. They sat in companionable silence for a moment, firelight dancing between them, Hamzy pulled a small tin from her bag, rubbing salve into her hands, the scent of herbs mixing with smoke. "You didn't ask many questions back there," Dave said at last. "I don't need stories to treat wounds," she replied. "Pain tells me enough." He nodded, gaze fixed on the fire. "Most folks are curious, or suspicious." "Curiosity can wait," Hamzy said. "Suspicion wastes energy." Dave laughed softly at that, a sound low and warm. "You're different from most folks who pass through here." "So are you," she countered. "Most men don't offer safety without asking for something in return." The kettle whistled. Dave poured hot water into 2 tin cups and handed one to her. "I figure the canyon takes enough from people already." Hamzy accepted the cup, fingers brushing his again. This time, neither pulled away too quickly. She sipped, eyes drifting to the vast darkness beyond the firelight. "How long have you been guiding these trails?" "Long enough to know which paths lie," he said. "And which ones tell the truth only to those who listen." Hamzy smiled faintly. "Sounds like patience." Dave studied her in return. "What made you choose this life?" She stiffened, not much, but enough. "I didn't choose it at first. It chose me." He sensed the boundary and didn't push. Instead, he added a log to the fire. Sparks leaped upward, briefly illuminating his face, lined by sun and wind, eyes steady and kind. The night deepened. Coyotes called in the distance, their cries echoing off canyon walls. Hamzy felt the ache in her shoulders, the weight of days spent moving from one camp to the next. She rarely allowed herself rest, even rarer still company. "You're welcome to stay tomorrow," Dave said. "There's another camp a few miles west. They've had trouble falls. Cave-ins could use your skills." Hamzy considered it. Work was never scarce, but something about the way he said stay made the word linger. "All right," she said slowly. "One more camp." Dave nodded, as if he'd hoped for that answer, but wouldn't have asked for it. Later, when the fire burned low, Hamzy lay wrapped in her blanket, staring up at a sky thick with stars. Dave settled nearby, back against a rock, rifle within reach. "A quiet guardian in the dark, Dave," she said softly. "Why, thank you, for tonight." He didn't look at her, but his voice was gentle. "You're welcome, Hamzy." As sleep finally pulled her under, Hamzy realized something unsettled and unexpected had taken root. Not obligation, but trust. And in a world carved by danger and dust, that might be the rarest thing of all. Morning broke slowly in the canyon, sunlight spilling like molten gold over jagged rock. Hamzy woke to the smell of coffee and the soft clink of a tin cup. She sat up, blinking away sleep, and found Dave crouched near the fire, pouring dark liquid with careful precision. "You're up early," she said. "Habit," he replied. "Figured you'd want breakfast before we ride." She accepted the cup, warming her hands against it. "You figured, right." They broke camp efficiently, moving with the ease of people used to travel. Dave checked the horses while Hamzy secured her medical satchel to the saddle. The trail west wound narrow and steep, carved into the canyon wall like a scar. Dave rode ahead, setting an easy pace, glancing back, often not in doubt of her skill, but out of quiet concern. Hamzy noticed, and something in her chest tightened pleasantly. By midday, they reached the mining camp. The place was tense, men moving with caution, eyes darting toward the hills. Dave dismounted first, hand resting near his rifle. "Bandits have been circling," one miner said. "Haven't struck yet." "They're watching," Dave replied, "just like the canyon." Hamzy didn't wait for more. She went straight to work, cleaning crushed fingers, binding twisted ankles, checking lungs thick with dust. Dave stayed close, sometimes fetching water, sometimes standing guard. They moved around each other naturally, like a rhythm learned long ago. During a brief lull, Hamzy stepped outside the tent, inhaling fresh air. Dave joined her, handing over a canteen. "You don't stop," he said. "People don't stop getting hurt." He studied her face. "What about you?" She hesitated. "What about me? When do you rest?" Hamzy looked out over the hills. "When it's safe to." Dave's voice softened. You deserve more than scraps of peace. She met his gaze, then really looked at him. And you, always protecting trails, camps, strangers. He exhaled slowly. Someone has to. The distant crack of a rifle shattered the moment. Down, Dave shouted, pulling Hamzy behind a supply crate as dust kicked up nearby. Bandits crested the ridge, shots ringing out. Miners scattered. Dave moved with practiced speed, firing controlled shots to keep the attackers back. Hamzy's heart pounded not with fear, but focus. She crawled to a wounded miner, pressing cloth to a bleeding shoulder, working under fire. Hamzy, stay down, Dave called. I'm not leaving him. Their eyes met, across the chaosphere. Trust. Something deeper passing between them. Dave adjusted his position, shielding her with his body as best he could. After tense minutes, the bandits retreated, melting back into the hills. Silence returned, broken only by ragged breaths. Dave hurried to her side. Are you hurt? She shook her head. No, but he is. They worked together until the last wound was bound and the camp settled. As dusk fell, exhaustion washed over them both. Later, sitting on a crate under the dimming sky, Dave spoke quietly. You could have been killed today. So could you, she replied. Yet here we are. He met her eyes. I don't like the thought of losing you. The words surprised them both. Hamzy swallowed. Careful, Dave. I don't stay anywhere long. Maybe, he said gently. You haven't found the right place yet. The canyon wind whispered around them, carrying possibility along the trail between two steady heartbeats. Chapter 4. When the canyon listens. They stayed at the camp 2 more nights. Bandits did not return, but the tension lingered like dust after a cavern. Hamzy worked by lantern light, her hands steady despite exhaustion. Dave remained close, always watching the ridges, always listening. On the second evening, when the miners finally slept easier, Dave led Hamzy away from camp toward a narrow overlook. The canyon opened wide before them, layers of stone glowing under the moon. Most folks don't know this spot, Dave said. It's quiet. The canyon listens here. Hamzy folded her arms against the cool breeze. What does it listen for? Truth, he replied. They stood in silence, the vastness around them pressing in and opening up all at once. I wasn't always a guide, Dave said, after a long pause. Used to be a miner. Lost men I was supposed to watch out for. Took to the trails after that. Figured I could keep people safer above ground. Hamzy nodded slowly. I was supposed to settle down once. Home, family. That life slipped through my fingers when sickness came through my town. I learned how to fight it too late, for some, so I keep moving. Now, so I'm never too late again. The canyon wind rose, carrying their words away, holding them just the same. Dave turned to her. You don't have to run forever. She looked at him, moonlight tracing the lines of his face. And you don't have to carry every burden alone. Something shifted, then quiet, but certain. When they returned to camp, Dave stopped her near the fire. Hamzy, if you ever wanted a place to rest. She stepped closer, placing a hand over his chest. I don't make promises lightly. I know, he said. Their kiss was slow, unhurried, like the canyon itself, deep, steady, earned. No rush, no regret. The next morning came too soon. Supplies were low, and the trail east called Hamzy onward. She saddled her horse, heart heavier than her pack. Dave walked beside her. There's a spring 2 days south. Good place, safe. She smiled softly. You always thinking ahead. Only for you, he replied. She mounted, then paused. Come with me. Dave blinked, surprised. Then he smiled, the kind that reached his eyes. I was hoping you'd ask. Together, they turned toward the open trail, the canyon, watching as 2 paths finally became one. The trail south unfolded gently, as if the land itself approved of their choice. Red stone gave way to open plains, dotted with mesquite and wild sage. Hamzy rode beside Dave, their horses moving in easy rhythm, no rush pressing them forward for once. For the first time in years, Hamzy felt the strange sensation of arriving rather than leaving. They reached the spring by late afternoon. Clear water bubbled up from between smooth stones, cool and steady. Cottonwood trees cast long shadows, and birds flitted low, unafraid. Dave dismounted first, surveying the area with a practiced eye. "This place could last," he said. "People pass through, but it's peaceful." Hamzy knelt by the water, washing trail dust from her hands. She watched the ripples spread outward, then fade. So could we. They made camp together, not as strangers sharing convenience, but as partners, shaping something new. Dave gathered firewood while Hamzy checked her supplies, organizing bottles and bandages on a flat stone. As dusk settled in, a fire crackled to life, warm and welcoming. "You know," Dave said, handing her a tin cup, "I never planned on stopping either." Hamzy smiled. "Funny how plans change when you listen." "To the canyon?" he asked. "To your heart," she corrected. The days that followed were simple, and because of that, extraordinary. Travelers came through, wagon families, injured prospectors, tired riders. Hamzy treated wounds beneath the cottonwoods, while Dave guided those who needed safe passage onward. Word spread quickly of a nurse by the spring, and a guide who knew every honest trail. At night, they sat by the fire, sharing stories not weighed down by sorrow. Laughter came easier, sleep came deeper. One evening, as the sky burned orange and violet, Hamzy rested her head against Dave's shoulder. "I used to think healing was only about fixing what's broken," she said quietly. "And now?" Dave asked. "Now, I think it's also about staying long enough to see the strength return." He wrapped an arm around her. "I'm glad you stayed." "So am I." Months passed. The spring became a landmark. Not just a place on a map, but a promise of care, of safety, of quiet hope. Hamzy no longer counted the days by miles traveled, but by sunrises shared and lives helped together. One morning, Dave carved a small sign and placed it near the trail. "Healing Spring. All welcome." Hamzy watched, eyes shining. "You really believe this is home, don't you?" Dave took her hands, rough palms, warm and sure. "Home isn't the land. It's who stands beside you on it." She leaned into him, heart steady, no longer restless. As the canyon wind drifted through the cottonwoods, it carried their laughter, their work, their love, proof that even in the wildest places, healing could grow roots. And somewhere beyond the ridges, the trails kept winding, carrying new stories toward the spring, where a traveling nurse and a protective guide had found more than survival. They had found each other. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more Western stories.